streaming series on YouTube that we talk everything love, everything relationship. Today, as I'm waiting for my good friend and colleague, Dr. Guy Winch, I'm going to tell you who he is and why this is important for us to listen to his messages. Dr. Guy Winch is an internationally renowned psychologist who advocates for integrating the science of emotional health into our daily lives. He has 3 TED Talks that are incredibly informative, and they have the hit of over 30 million. So you might want to check them out because it means that also it resonated with so many people so far in the world. And also, he is the co-host of the Ambie Nominated Dear Therapists podcast in iHeartRadio. And you can learn a lot more about him at guywinch.com. All the information will be below this video as well. Hi, Guy. We made it work.
Touch and go, but we did. It's lovely to be
We
here.
did
It's lovely to
it.
see you.
Thank you. Lovely to see you too. So we are talking about emotional health, and I have to tell people how stressed we were, both of us, to get to this call because we didn't know, if the technology could work. So without further ado, I gave people a little bit of a synopsis of why should we all listen to you. And I would love for us to dive in because you have so much wisdom that I don't want to kind of waste our time with anything else. We already...
Let's dive in.
Okay, wonderful. So, Guy, one of the things that I would love to discuss today is you have these 7 elements, like a common emotional injuries that we endure every day, including guilt, failure, rejection, all that good stuff, right? But I wonder if we could talk about 3 main categories today, because it's Valentine's Day. Even if people don't want to think about it, some people don't even care about it, but still we are pressurized to feel love, to be in love, to experience love today, right? And I wonder, 3 categories that I deal with today specifically are, in particular, people who lost a loved one. It could be a human or any other thing, right? A loved one, and they're sitting with this pain and grief today. The second category, there are people who are just reminded how stuck they are in their relationship with the wrong one. So they feel like, oh, that grief, that I could be somewhere else. And then the third, last but not least category, are people who don't even feel like they're deserving of a loving relationship. And I wonder if we can talk about the common grief situation that they are feeling. And the floor is yours. Please walk us through it and help us get through it.
Well, look, you brought up 3 painful categories, but I do think it's important to acknowledge on a day in which a lot of people are celebrating their love or their relationship or their friendship love, whatever it is, that there are plenty of other people who are not and who might be in quite a bit of pain for those 3 reasons that you mentioned. And it's very difficult to just go about your business when in every storefront, all the commercials, in other words, it's not as if you can close your eyes and Valentine's Day doesn't exist. It's all around you. And that just makes a pain feel worse when you're feeling lonely or when you're feeling isolated or when you're feeling like you wish your circumstance were different, or if you're feeling stuck, like you're with someone, but sometimes it can feel even lonelier to be with someone you're not connected to than to be alone. And that's a very difficult thing. And so I just want to offer some thoughts to those people about how to, first of all, by all means, if you can compartmentalize and go about your day as if like, what, Valentine's Day, I can actually ignore it quite well, great. Please do feel free to do so, if otherwise that would cause you pain. It's called compartmentalizing, when we kind of put aside, we're aware of something in our head, but we put aside the emotion. And some people can do that better than others can. But for those who cannot, for those who are sitting, with this pain, I always believe that you need to do a few things with any kind of emotional pain that you experience. First, you do need to use it as a source of information to help guide you a little bit, because people will say, oh, it just feels crappy on this day when I'm with someone that I don't really love, or when I'm alone, or when I lost a loved one, or even a cherished pet or something like that. It just feels crappy. And crappy is one, first of all, when you look at the emotion wheel, crappy doesn't show up on it because it's not an emotion per se. And the point I'm trying to make there is that we have to get a little bit more granular because our emotions can be informative if we can parse out what exactly we're feeling. So you might be feeling a little bit lonely. You might be feeling a little bit resentment of the other person, because resentment is about fairness or unfairness about your situation. You might just be feeling sad. You might be feeling really, really frustrated that you're with this person. Here again is another Valentine's Day with the same person, and I'm just not feeling it. And to make the distinctions between sad or frustrated or lonely is important, because each of them would point you to different action items. If you're frustrated about your relationship, what's frustrating you about it? How might you feel more connected? Or what might you need to do? What's keeping you stuck from either improving or moving on and breaking up? That's an inquiry to be had. If you're sad because you're grieving, and then if you just lost someone, there's no shortcuts here. That it's okay to be in the grief. It's okay to be in the sadness. I'm not suggesting you sit in it all day, but by all means acknowledge it, have the space for it, because you can't just, bid that away. You can try and distract yourself from it, and at some point during the day, you might want to do that. And if you're feeling alone, then the message and the lesson there is, here's just one day of the year in which you might feel alone. But there are others. There is your birthday, and there are holidays, and there are all kinds of things. And if you're feeling too alone now, maybe that's a reminder to get proactive in terms of creating new connections or deepening ones that you have. So the next Valentine's Day doesn't come around and you're saying to yourself, well, here's this many now in a row.
Yeah, thank you so much. Very wise, actually, because I think you went and covered the whole spectrum here and using these emotions. First of all, naming them. Second of all, using the emotions to mobilize them rather than paralyze them. I think that's also a very good distinction that you're making. The other thing that I want to say is having a sense of agency is one of those fundamental needs that we have. And what I'm hearing is you are also trying to induce a sense of agency. I'm feeling this way. Now what?
Correct. Because when you do something that's proactive, when you actually start to problem solve, well, how do I get myself out of this? Or how do I change this for next time? You feel that you're doing something. And that's what agency means, that I can actually have an impact on my environment, on my life in that way. And agency is a very, very positive psychological need that we have, to feel that we do have agency. We sometimes put ourselves in jail or put ourselves in a box and feel stuck when we're not. So that's an important reminder. I did want to pick up one thing that I said that I just wanted to highlight for people.
Please.
I said at the beginning, there's an emotion wheel with all the different emotions described, and crappy isn't one of them, was what I said. I use that emotion wheel all the time, and I have used it with patients all the time, because we do not remember 150 words for emotions. We're not that good at parsing out emotions. But when we see the word, oh yes, resentment, oh yes, disappointment, oh yes, a little bit of anger or irritation, then we can recognize it. And people tend to think, well, if it's not a 10, then it doesn't count. No. Some of the feelings you might have might be a 10, some might be a 4 or a 5, but they're still there. So make a list of all the emotions you have by going through the emotion wheel and just seeing, like, oh yes, that speaks to me right now in terms of how I'm feeling. And then rate them from 1 to 10. And it will give you a tapestry of feelings that you have, which is more complex than you might be thinking in the moment. And those are really good information. There's some relief here, because I did have the option to be with someone today, but I wouldn't have enjoyed it. It would have made me feel worse. So there's a relief that I chose to be alone, even though it's painful, etc., etc. Well, we're complex people, and to understand the complexity of our emotional life really helps us steer our boats, cars, whatever the transportation vehicle is, forward.
Absolutely. Thank you. So literacy, self-literacy is very important before we get to any fluency to put things
Exactly.
into
The emotional
motion.
literacy and granularity is very important.
Absolutely. On that note, Guy, I know that you have tons of resources out there. Do you mind just taking a couple of minutes, just walking people through the resources that you specifically have out there? Because I know you have a lot of tools for people, and I would love this to be recorded here.
Sure. First of all, my website is guywinch.com, and there you will have access to all of them. I have 3 books. 2 of them are relevant for our discussion. One is called Emotional First Aid, which you mentioned at the beginning. It's in 28 languages. And the other is called How to Fix a Broken Heart. And that is for people who have romantic heartbreak or have experienced pet loss. Those two I combined because I thought they were both forms of grief that we do not pay enough attention to, and that we should. In addition to that, I also have a podcast which I host with Lori Gottlieb, in which we do live therapy sessions. We don't call them therapy sessions; they're just sessions because they're not therapy per se. They're in for entertainment purposes only, but they're basically sessions. And we cover things like heartbreak. We cover things like grief. We have a session with heartbroken people. We have a session with somebody who just lost a loved one, and all other kinds of situations that would be relevant for people. And the sessions are marked with a little blurb. You can find the ones that are right for you. It's called Dear Therapists. You can get that wherever podcasts are available, whichever channel you choose to get your podcasts on. And there are all kinds of writings as well that I have and that I do. And so you can get links to talks there. I also have a TED Talk about how to fix a broken heart, which people can find on my website, and a TED Talk about emotional first aid, which people can also find on my website, as well as other links.
Thank you. And plus your Instagram page that I think, for daily doses, little doses would be helpful. So we have all the links down. I've seen people do this in YouTube, like down there,
Yes.
under the video. So we'll put all of those for people. It's all the matter of, the collective wisdom that we have. There's so much wisdom. And I'm hoping that with this series and everything that we do, we bring all of that together so that we help people navigate all the noise that is out there, that are inaccuracies that are out there.
Yes, I think that's so important, because I just want to point out, I'm still very grateful that 15 years ago, we didn't have YouTube, or we might have had YouTube, but we didn't have all this information. And now, between podcasts and social media, Instagram, YouTube, etc., people can get a lot of free information that can be extremely beneficial. And I hope people take advantage of where we are today, technological wise, that we have so much available, and we put it out there so that people from all over can really have access to that.
Yes, absolutely. And also, I wanted to build up on that because I'm thinking, just talking to clients, right? It doesn't matter where the information or the wisdom comes. Some people feel guilty even. Like, well, I read this Instagram post and it resonated with me, as if, they're ridiculing themselves because something resonated with them on Instagram because this is for entertainment, not education. It's okay. We're just, normalizing everything, that wherever that the wisdom comes, whatever that resonates with you is validating for you emotionally, just take it. Take
Absolutely.
it and see, so don't follow the information if you kind of have a hint of doubt about them. Don't build your life on them, but it's good to be validated, and little doses at least. Okay, thank you. Can we go to guilt? Because I feel like we're talking about the heartbreak, we're talking, about all of that. There are also people out there who feel very lucky, which doesn't go well with me when we talk about luck and love. You know me, love by design. Everything is by design, right? As much as we can. But I wonder if we could talk a little bit about that guilt feeling. That what if I have that? What if I am in a loving relationship? And a lot of people have this fear of even losing that. So can we talk a little bit about that fear of losing what you have and emotional health that we're talking about?
Yeah, look, when people have a fear of losing the relationship they have, it's usually at the beginning, before it's been solidified sufficiently, or before they feel the commitment that they need to feel in order to exhale and this is not, maybe it'll turn into the thing, now it's the thing, officially in some kind of way. And so there's a lot of anxiety that's associated with the early stages of romance and of infatuation, because it's this excitement, because you don't know if it's going to go the right way. I would like to point out that it's not just that you don't know if it's going to go the right way. You don't know the person. So, when we start out, we have 5 or 6 data information points, and we connect those dots and paint the Mona Lisa, but we don't know if it's the Mona Lisa yet. We're just filling in a lot of dots with a lot of assumptions. And and it takes time to find out. I always tell people that I think it takes at least a year to get to know someone, because you have to see them through all the seasons, through all the holidays, how they are here, how they are with their family, how they are when they travel, how they are when you fight. You don't know for a while. So that kind of takes time. So if somebody's feeling anxious, it's probably either at the beginning, or if you're in the middle of a relationship and you're feeling anxious, and that's not something that's been common for you, you need to do some inquiry about, why am I feeling anxious? And usually something is going on. Now, I'm not saying something bad is going on, but there might be something subtle that's happening, a certain emotional distance or drifting that one or both of you feel, certain changes of habits, maybe communications dropped off and people start to feel less secure in their relationships. Take that super seriously. And the best thing to do about it is have a conversation, with the other person and say, just wanted to check in, how you're feeling about things, etc., etc. Maybe not today if you have Valentine's Day plans, but if the Valentine's Day doesn't go well, which it doesn't sometimes, then there's a conversation to be had about where are we, what's happening.
Exactly. Thank you. So just to clarify for people a little bit further, any kind of anxiety, we know it as anxiety, but it's basically the agitation of the nervous system. It could be based on a great news, horrible news, somewhere in between. So it is going back to the emotional literacy that you mentioned at the beginning. It's helpful to know which part of body comes alive. Where do I feel it? What is the sensation? And if you can really talk about it in a way that our colleague Dr. Kirk Schneider talks about it in his book Life Enhancing Anxiety, that anxiety could be awesome or awful. So it is important for people to really recognize that where they channel that anxiety. And again, going back to that sense of agency that we also talked about. One other question. So do you also believe that, let's say you say you need to get to know the person. It takes at least a year, right? And as you know, I talk about the 6 ingredients that need to be present: shared vision, respect, trust, attraction, compassion, and acts of loving. So those, for people who would like to know where to focus your efforts, those are the ones that I can offer. But going back to your work, I wonder, what are the things that you see most common that couples bring up to you, like within the relational space? What are your tips for people to take care of themselves emotionally and the other person? Do you have top tips for people?
Yeah, well, first of all, you mentioned the 6 factors that you think are important. It's like keeping the plates spinning on a stick, and there's 6 plates spinning, and you have to keep juggling them in a relationship to make sure, because they're not, sometimes one of the plates is going to start falling and you have to quickly pay attention to that one, which sounds very laborious. And guess what? Relationships are slightly laborious, in that way. I hope I'm in New York. I hope the siren is not coming across
Yes,
too
I hear the
strongly.
sound of New York. That's good.
It's authenticity. There we are. I hope it'll pass soon. I'm so sorry. But, such is New
No
York.
problem. No problem.
Sometimes when you're in a rural place and you hear a siren, you're like, oh, that's not so great. They're coming my way. But this is New York. They're just coming by.
Yeah.
So to be sure, relationships take a lot of work and it takes a lot of effort. And you can't make the effort by yourself. One of the mistakes people make is like they try and think for the other person and then operate in this way, that I'll do the thing that I think they might need me to do. Like, why don't you just ask them what they need you to do? And then by your asking, tell them what you need them to do at the same time. In other words, the communication here is what's so vital and important. And that's the thing. And that's the thing that people need to like focus on, in terms of, if something's not going well, great. Talk about what it is. Find out the other perspective. See what you can do to fix it.
Oh, that's wonderful. So to have that communication, if we can take it a little bit further, I don't know what your opinion is on this, Guy. I often tell people to go for a walk if their bodily ability allows, and also the environment, the context is safe enough, for them to do that.
Yes.
Just because of the bilateral stimulation, and also, you're walking, regulating yourself as you're talking, and carving time for those conversations to bring them up. And so communication is one. What other tips?
Well, first of all, I mean, I think just in terms of this is Valentine's Day, for example. And
Yes.
so, how much thought did you put into that? How much clarity did you give your partner about what would work for you? How much clarity? We tend to think in heterosexual couples that Valentine's Day is about the man pleasing the woman sometimes, but it's really both ways. And I know plenty of men who are much more excited about Valentine's Day than their wives are in that scenario. It really can change. But often when there's an opportunity in a relationship to have a moment. And yes, it's commercialized and all of that is true, but it's also a moment that it just is a reminder where you can take stock and think about, what do I want this day to look like? Yes, there's a restaurant we planned, or we planned this, but what do I want to say that kind of captures where we are right now in a positive way, in a good way? Let's use this as a way to kind of take stock and, let's say, articulate gratitude for what we bring to the relationship. Let's use this opportunity to say, here are 3 things I really, really appreciate about you that always make my life good and make me smile. And I tell them to you, but I want to tell them to you again, because this is a day in which I'm really feeling them. So to articulate that appreciation to the other person, and maybe even try and go to places you haven't gone before, in that small little things that people do, little efforts that sometimes don't get acknowledged or appreciated, when the other person says, I noticed that you've been so quiet in the morning ever since I told you that I like to sleep in a little bit later. I really appreciate that. I can see you tiptoeing around. It makes me feel loved. Something silly and small, and that's not so silly, but though this is an opportunity to look for those things that can really, and those things deepen a bond, because then the other person hopefully can respond to you in that kind of way. So again, it's about articulating what you appreciate, so the other person doesn't feel taken for granted, and that you let them know, please continue those efforts, because those I really notice.
Oh, I love this. I think in everything that you're talking about, there's an element of intentionality. Just pausing, paying attention. Um, it's I hope if people are going to take one thing away from our conversation, would be that to pause and pay attention, not to take each other for granted, because that's what happens in especially relationships where people are building something together over a long period of time. Yeah. So, Guy, on this Valentine's Day, we have a few minutes left, and I have so many questions based on your work. But I wonder if there would be one thing that you want people to take away on this Valentine's Day, what would that be for a person, just an individual?
Look, I'm going to say something. I'm going to just bounce off what you just said, because I think it's incredibly important. One of the phrases I use all the time is disengage your autopilot. Because the way our brain works, our brain is trying to be as efficient as possible.
Yes.
So if something isn't a problem, don't spend time on it. Pay attention to where the problems are, not where they're not. And there goes intentionality. There you get into a routine. There we're doing the same thing again. We're not putting too much thought into it. Intentionality is really important. Another thing I always say is, I agree that people say the brain might be the most complex machine in the entire universe. True, but it requires adult supervision. And we have to be the adults. That's about disengaging the autopilot. That's about being thoughtful, mindful, and intentional about what you do. Not all the time, 24/7. That's exhausting. It is taxing in terms of our intellectual and emotional resources. But it's very important. And so to use certain occasions, like, say, Valentine's Day, birthdays, other kind of milestones in life, to really make sure you disengage the autopilot and do some reflection and do some communication. And I always say to couples, even if you have the best relationship, check in regularly with one another to see what can we tweak to make even better. And so again, disengage your autopilot and start being more intentional and more thoughtful, so you know where to direct those intentions. And that, of course, increases your sense of agency. You're much more likely to get to where you want to go if you steer rather than hope for the best.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. And I think that brings it all together for our today's conversation. And I am going to highlight that on our, on the video. Disengage your autopilot. Hopefully, people interpret it in a way that, they pause and they are more intentional. Thank you so much. It's lovely to see you anytime, but also in the morning of Valentine's Day. Thank you so much, Guy, for joining me.
You're welcome. It's lovely to see you too. And thank you for everyone who tuned in. I do hope you have a good Valentine's Day, however you spend it.
Thank you so much. The same to you. The same to you. Love you, everyone. We'll see you with another wonderful and world-renowned guest soon. Thank you so much. Thank you.